This is the unbelievable, heart-wrenching story of Elara Vance, a girl abandoned at 7 by her mother, Serafina, who chose the glamorous world of wealth, diamonds, and private jets over her child. Hi guys! Thanks for tuning in. Before we get started, smash that like button, share this video with your friends, and comment below. Let me know what you want to see next. Let's go! Elara Vance would always remember the heat that radiated from the tarmac that day. It shimmered above the ground like a mirage, turning the small-town airport into something unreal, a dream, or maybe a nightmare wearing sunlight like a mask. She was only 7, too young to understand betrayal, but old enough to feel when love was being ripped away. Her tiny fingers clutched a worn brown teddy bear by the ear. The stitching on the left arm had opened long ago, and its cotton guts puffed out like a secret it couldn't keep. "Stay close to me, Elara," her mother whispered. Serafina Vance, a woman so beautiful the sun seemed to brighten for her, wore a silk blue dress, far too glamorous for this dusty little airport. Her heels sank slightly into the gravel, but she didn't even notice. She was too busy glancing at the sleek, white, private jet parked beside the terminal, a jet polished so smoothly it looked like a blade in the sun. Its tail bore the unmistakable emblem, Thorn Industries. Serafina wasn't looking at her daughter. She was looking at him, Victor Thorn, the billionaire whose shadow stretched further than the jet behind him. He stood with his hands in his pockets, tall, imposing, every inch controlled arrogance. His eyes flicked toward Elara, like she was a smudge on an otherwise perfect life. "Elara, sweetie," Serafina said softly, bending to adjust the child's hair. "Mommy has to go for just a little while." Elara's heart thudded. A little while. Her voice was small, too small. "Yes, yes," Serafina said quickly, her eyes darting nervously toward Victor, who tapped his watch with impatient finality. Elara swallowed. "Can I come with you?" Serafina froze. Her perfectly painted lips parted, but the words didn't come. Instead, she knelt down, her bracelets chiming softly, and rested her hands on Elara's shoulders. "Sweetheart, I need to settle things first. Victor he's helping me get our life together." A trembling smile. "I'll send for you soon. I promise." "Serafina!" Victor called, his voice smooth and cold as the jet's chrome. "We're leaving. Now." Serafina cupped Elara's cheeks. "Be a good girl. I'll be back before you know it." Elara felt something break, silently, like a thread snapping inside her chest. She threw her arms around her mother. "Please, Mommy, don't leave. Please take me with." Serafina gently pried her off. "Elara, please don't make this harder." The roar of the jet's engines began to swell. The wind blasted her hair back. A metallic taste filled the air. "Mommy!" The scream tore out of Elara before she even realized it. Serafina flinched, but she didn't stop. She walked toward the jet, boarded it, never looked back. Elara pressed her face to the airport fence, tears streaking dust down her cheeks as the jet rolled onto the runway. "Mommy!" The engines roared, drowning her voice, her hope. The jet lifted, rising, climbing, taking her mother away. A shadow swept over the fence as the jet banked, blotting out the sun. Elara clutched the teddy bear until her knuckles whitened. That was the last kiss, the last promise, the last time Serafina Vance would ever be her mother. The car ride to the orphanage felt like being swallowed. Elara sat in the back of the social worker's faded blue sedan, staring at her reflection in the window, a tiny girl with wild hair, red-rimmed eyes, and a silence so deep it felt endless. The sign that loomed ahead read, "Riverstone Orphanage for Children, building futures since 1965. But the only thing Riverstone built was hopelessness. The building was a hulking 3-story structure of peeling gray paint and narrow windows that looked like the eyes of someone who'd seen too much and cared too little. The social worker sighed. "It'll be temporary, sweetie." Elara didn't believe her. Inside, the orphanage smelled of bleach, old potatoes, and something sour beneath it all. Children shuffled through the hallways like ghosts in mismatched clothes. A distant argument echoed, sharp words, cruel laughter. And then the matron arrived. Tall, angular, and wrapped in a brown cardigan that looked as old as the building itself, Matron Aldridge surveyed Elara with the distaste of someone examining an expired carton of milk. "So this is her?" "Yes," the social worker replied. "Elara Vance." The matron gave a tight, unfriendly smile. "Let's make one thing clear, child," she said, leaning down so their faces were inches apart. "Your mother chose her life. You will choose yours, and you will choose to behave. We do not tolerate daydreamers here." Elara blinked. "I wasn't." "That's your first mistake," the matron snapped. "Talking back." Elara's chest tightened. She held onto her teddy bear like it was the last piece of her mother that hadn't boarded that jet. That night, lying in a narrow cot beneath a barred window, Elara whispered to the cracked ceiling, "I'll wait for you, Mommy. I'll be good. Please come back." A plane passed overhead, a faint hum. She closed her eyes and imagined herself inside it, flying away from Riverstone, toward a world that didn't hurt. 2 months later, Elara had learned the rules of Riverstone. Rule 1, crying was weakness. Rule 2, weakness attracted bullies. Rule 3, Spike was the worst of them. Spike, a wiry boy with a shaved head and a permanent sneer, ran the orphanage like a crooked king. During lunch one day, he noticed Elara clutching a bundle of papers. He swaggered over with his 2 sidekicks, Riff and Leon. "What's that?" Spike asked. "And nothing." Spike snatched the papers. "Hey!" He flipped through them. Sketches of airplanes. Elegant curved wings. Sleek engines. Experimental designs a 7-year-old shouldn't logically be able to imagine. But Elara could feel them, like wings lived inside her mind. Spike scoffed. "What is this?" "Doodles." They're aircraft designs." Leon laughed. "Aircraft? You can't even tie your shoes." Elara lunged for her papers. "Give them back." Spike waited until she was close, and tore the drawings straight down the middle. Elara froze. He tore the next one, and the next, ripping them like they were nothing. "Stop!" she screamed. Spike grinned. "Why? These are trash. And you're trash too, Vance." A fire lit inside Elara, something fierce and burning and new. "I'm not trash," she said through her teeth. Spike shrugged. "Could have fooled me." He tossed the shredded sketches into the air like confetti and walked away, whistling. Elara fell to her knees, gathering the scraps. Her hands shook. Her breathing hitched. But in her chest, beneath the pain, something else grew. Resolve. One day, she promised herself, "I'll build the greatest aircraft the world has ever seen. And no one, not Spike, not the matron, not even my mother, will ever crush my dreams again." The night Elara escaped Riverstone was moonless, the kind of darkness that swallowed sound. For weeks, she had planned it in secret. Every day, she snuck into the matron's office, memorizing the layout of the surrounding streets. She pilfered a folded city map from a forgotten drawer. She saved coins she found under beds, behind radiators in the cafeteria gutter, and she waited for the matron to take her nightly pill, the one that knocked her out cold. Waited for Spike to fall asleep, his snores echoing like a broken motorcycle engine. Then, finally, at 12 years old, Elara slipped from her cot. Her heart hammered, but her steps were silent. She crept through the hallway, each floorboard threatening betrayal. Past the office, past the boys' dormitory, past the trophy case filled with dusty awards the orphanage hadn't won in decades. When she reached the back exit, her fingers trembled so badly she could barely turn the knob. The cold air hit her like freedom. She clutched the map, the coins, and her mended teddy bear. She ran, barefoot down the cracked pavement, across empty streets, into the night. Her lungs burned, But she didn't stop until the orphanage was a distant blot. She had no idea where she was going. She only knew where she wasn't going. Back. After hours of wandering, hunger gnawed at her stomach. She followed the sound of dogs barking, thinking maybe she would find a neighborhood with food scraps. Instead, she found it. A metal kingdom. The Hemlock Junkyard. Its towering walls of scrap metal glinted in the faint streetlight like rusted giants. The gate was ajar, just enough for a small girl to slip through. Inside, the world smelled like oil, iron, and decay. Shadows twisted over mountains of discarded machines. Exhausted, freezing, starving, Elara crawled beneath the shell of an old car. Her eyes fluttered. For the first time in years, she dared to whisper a wish. Let me be free. Then she collapsed. She woke to the harsh scrape of metal. A boot nudged her foot. What the hell are you doing in my junkyard? Elara blinked. A towering old man stood over her. Gray beard like steel wool, eyebrows thick as storm clouds, arms folded across a grease-stained shirt. He looked like a statue carved from stubbornness. Her throat was dry. I didn't have anywhere else to go. Not my problem. He turned to walk away. Panic jolted Elara to her feet. Wait, please. He paused. No one cares about a runaway kid, he growled. If you're smart, you'll go back to wherever you came from. Please don't make me, she whispered. He turned slowly, studying her, the torn clothes, the dirt-streaked face, the trembling hands clutching a teddy bear missing half its stuffing. What's your name? Elara. Age? 12. He sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Damn it. He motioned for her to follow. Come on. He led her across the junkyard, through aisles of broken engines and rusted airplane parts, a forgotten world of metal skeletons. Then he stopped at a battered shack. You hungry? Elara nodded. He handed her a metal plate with a sandwich that looked like it had survived a war. She devoured it like a wild animal. The old man grunted. You got spirit, kid, but spirit doesn't buy survival. She looked up. I'll work. I'll do anything. Humph. He pointed at a rust-eaten radio on the table. Fix that. Elara frowned. I don't. Well, you said you'd do anything. She hesitated. Then she picked up a screwdriver. Her hands moved instinctively, loosening the casing, checking the wiring, realigning the transistor. Her fingers danced like she had done this 1,000 times. Hemlock's eyes widened just a fraction. Within minutes, the radio crackled to life. Static filled the shack, then a faint voice. Weather tonight is clear. The old man crossed his arms. Well, I'll be damned. Elara froze. Did I do something wrong? He barked a laugh. No, girl. You just did something right. He jabbed a thumb toward the far end of the junkyard. You want to stay? You work. And maybe you'll learn something worth knowing. Elara's chest swelled. For the first time since her mother left, she felt something warm and dangerous. Hope. Elara was 14 the first time Hemlock let her into the place no one else had ever seen. By then, she had become a fixture of the junkyard, darting between piles of scrap like a small, determined shadow. She could tell the sound of a failing alternator from a clogged carburetor, had memorized which paths through the metal mountains were stable and which ones shifted dangerously after rain, and had learned to read Hemlock's moods better than most adults could. But she had never been beyond the makeshift office and the dusty shed where they stored common tools. Hemlock guarded his secrets the way a dragon guards gold. That changed on a blistering afternoon when the sun hammered down hard enough to make the metal shimmer like something alive. Hemlock found her kneeling beside the gutted remains of a washing machine, poking curiously at its motor. You're going to electrocute yourself one of these days, he grumbled. Elara wiped sweat from her forehead. There's no power running to it. I checked. Still too smart for your own good, he muttered. Then he gestured with a jerk of his head. "Come on. I'm showing you something." She froze. Hemlock never invited, never offered, never explained. "What is it?" she asked cautiously. "Don't ask. Just follow." They walked through the heart of the junkyard, deeper than she had ever gone, beneath archways of twisted steel, past an airplane fuselage half swallowed by vines, past a wall of crushed cars that rose like a mechanical canyon. Finally, they reached what looked like a massive rusted shipping container, its edges welded to pieces of old airplane wings and thick steel plates. Hemlock pulled a set of keys from his pocket. Clack, clack. The locks opened. He yanked the door aside. Light spilled out, and Elara's breath caught in her throat. Inside was a world she didn't know existed. Tables lined with tools, so clean they gleamed. Shelves packed with engineering textbooks. Drafting tables, blueprint rolls, precision equipment, soldering irons, and a chalkboard covered in equations that looked like a foreign language, but felt like a whisper she almost understood. "What is this place?" she whispered. Hemlock crossed his arms. "This is where I worked. Before I became the grumpy old man yelling at you to sort copper from aluminum." Elara stepped inside slowly, afraid that if she breathed too hard the place would evaporate into dust. "You built things here," she said softly. "Things nobody wanted built," he corrected. "Too advanced, too expensive, too disruptive. So I walked away." Elara traced a finger over a stack of books. "This is amazing." Hemlock watched her quietly, something unguarded flickering in his eyes. "You've got talent," he said gruffly. "More than I did at your age. Maybe more than I ever had. But talent without knowledge is like an engine without fuel." She turned to him. "Teach me." He hesitated only a moment. "Fine, but don't expect me to be nice about it." She grinned. "I wouldn't believe it if you were." He snorted. "Smartass." And so began her real education. Hemlock shoved textbooks into her hands. He taught her how to read wing diagrams, how to understand airflow, how to solve equations that made her head spin, how to see the invisible physics that kept an aircraft in the air. Some nights she fell asleep at the drafting table, cheek pressed against blueprints, pencil still in hand. Hemlock always tossed a blanket over her instead of waking her. But in the morning he would mutter, "Sloppy work habits," as if he hadn't been the one to make her comfortable. By 16, Elara could build radios blindfolded, repair an engine from sounds alone, and calculate optimal wing load before Hemlock finished writing the formula on the chalkboard. But she wanted more. "I want to build something that flies," she said one evening, sitting beside Hemlock on the roof of an old RV. The sunset painted the sky in streaks of orange and gold. Hemlock raised an eyebrow. "You barely sleep as it is. Now you want wings." "I want a drone," she said. "A real one. Stable. Efficient. Not the cheap plastic toys. Something I designed from scratch." He stared at her for a long moment, then exhaled. "All right, but you build it with junkyard scraps. Nothing store-bought. If you want wings, you make them from trash." She smiled. "Deal." The next 3 months were a blur of cuts, burns, triumphs, and failures. Drone 1.0, lifted 2 inches, spun like a demon, exploded. Drone 1.1, refused to lift at all. Hemlock joked it had aspirations of being a paperweight. Drone 2.0, lifted beautifully, and then hit Hemlock in the shoulder. After he cursed for 5 minutes straight, he grudgingly admitted, "At least the thrust is improving." Elara rearranged motors, reshaped propellers, rewired ESCs, rebuilt the frame out of everything from aluminum rods to bicycle spokes. Finally, after countless iterations, Drone 3.0 was ready. It looked like a strange bird, sleek, angular, balanced. On a crisp morning, she set it on a clear patch of ground. Hemlock stood beside her with crossed arms. If this takes off and flies into my truck windshield, you're rebuilding the whole thing. She swallowed hard. Noted. She flipped the switch. The drone whirred, shivered, lifted, up, up, up. Elara held her breath. It hovered, wobbling, but steady enough to hold its place in the air. It's working, she whispered. Keep steady, Hemlock muttered, edging backward. She carefully tilted the controls. The drone responded, moving in a tight circle. Elara felt something in her chest unfurl, a wild, fierce joy. She laughed. Hemlock, it's flying. He grunted. Well, I'll be damned. The drone hummed in the air like it belonged there, as if the sky recognized it. She brought it down gently. The moment it touched the ground, she burst into tears. Hemlock didn't comfort her, he never did, but he rested a heavy hand on her shoulder. You built something that belonged to the sky, he said. Remember this feeling. You're going to feel it again. She wiped her cheeks. I want to build something bigger. He smirked. Of course you do. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. Elara was crouched over a table rewiring a control board. Hemlock was yelling at a delivery driver who claimed he didn't know the difference between titanium scraps and stainless steel. The drone she'd built was running diagnostics nearby. Then a low, powerful hum rolled over the junkyard. Not the whine of her drone. Not the sputter of Hemlock's old trucks. A deeper sound. A commanding one. Elara looked up instinctively. A private jet sliced through the sky. A sleek silver machine with wings that caught the sun like polished blades. Her heart twisted. On the tail was the emblem she had never truly forgotten. Thorn Industries. Her breath stopped. Hemlock followed her gaze. Thorn jet, he muttered. Probably some corporate hotshot heading to the city airport. But Elara's blood ran cold. That jet, that logo, that sound. The last time she'd seen it was the day her mother disappeared up a staircase and broke her heart. Her stomach churned. It's them, she whispered. Hemlock turned fully. Them. Elara, who's on that jet? Victor Thorne, she said numbly. And maybe my mother. Hemlock didn't speak for a long time. Finally he said, then look hard. She did. The jet soared smoothly across the sky. Untouchable, powerful, perfect. Too perfect. Men like Thorne rule the sky with money, Hemlock said quietly. But money is slow. Money fears change. Men like him will always hold others down to stay up. Elara clenched her jaw. I'm going to build something better, she whispered. Something he can't buy. Something he never saw coming. Hemlock nodded once. Good. Make him small. The Thorn jet vanished into the clouds. Elara never hated the sky before, but she did that day. At 17, Elara found something that changed the course of her life. She'd been digging through Hemlock's old engineering magazines, scribbling notes and expanding her drone designs. One article, yellowed and half-ripped, mentioned a shelved project. Project Nightingale. The aircraft that could have revolutionized aviation if only it had lived. But there were no details, no diagrams, no explanation. A secret project. Buried. Hidden. Elara's pulse quickened. What's Project Nightingale? She asked Hemlock. Hemlock's expression tightened. Barely, but enough. Just a project that never got built, he said. Forget it. Elara didn't. Something in Hemlock's voice told her it wasn't just a project. So she began researching. Old newspapers, defunct aerospace forums, archived conference papers. Every breadcrumb pointed to a company long dead, Etherian Dynamics. Its digital archives should have been deleted years ago. But Elara knew something most people didn't. Deleted didn't mean gone. Not always. Night after night, she sat at the workshop computer, typing until her fingers shook. She learned old coding languages, brute force passwords, slipped through outdated firewalls like a ghost. One night, she found a locked folder buried inside an abandoned server. /archive restricted, Nightingale /. Her heart pounded. She attempted a password. Denied. Another. Denied. She frowned, leaned back, then typed one more, something instinctual. Hemlock. Access granted. Her breath left her in one sharp gasp. She opened the folder. Blueprints exploded across the screen. Sleek wings, advanced engine designs, fuel-efficient propulsion systems, decades ahead of anything on the market. It was beautiful, perfect, revolutionary. She printed everything. The printer whirred and coughed as pages filled the workshop floor like fallen snow. When Hemlock walked in, his face turned white. What have you done?" he whispered. "I found it," she said. "Project Nightingale. Hemlock, this is genius." He pressed a shaking hand to his forehead. "You weren't supposed to see this." "Why?" "Because I designed it," he said hoarsely, "and because it ruined my life." It took Hemlock a long time to speak. He sank onto a stool, stared at the blueprints scattered like ghosts across the floor, and exhaled a lifetime of regret. "Elara, I wasn't always this." He gestured vaguely at his oil-stained shirt, his worn boots, the cluttered workshop. "I was Harold Elias Hemlock, Chief Aeronautical Engineer at Etherian Dynamics. Youngest in the department. Brilliant. Arrogant. Stupid." Elara sat beside him silently. "I designed Project Nightingale," he continued, voice cracking. "The most efficient jet ever conceived. It would have reshaped the aviation world. Safer, cleaner, cheaper. But that kind of change threatens powerful men. Victor Thorne." Elara whispered. Hemlock gave a humorless laugh. His associates, investors, executives like him, men who liked the old world because they owned it. Her blood boiled. They offered to buy the project, not to build it, to bury it, and they offered me a fortune to sign it away. "You didn't," she said, hopeful. I did," he admitted, voice breaking. "I sold my dream, sold the future, for money, for comfort, for cowardice." Elara felt the air leave her lungs. "So I left," Hemlock said. "Bought this junkyard, built this workshop, hid from the world I betrayed." He lifted a trembling hand. "But you found the one thing I wanted to forget." Elara touched his arm. "Maybe you were meant to hide it until someone came who could finish it." Hemlock looked at her, eyes shining. "You think you're that someone?" "I know I am," she said softly. "Hemlock, we can build this. Together." He stared at her for a long time, then stood without a word. He walked to a locked metal cabinet, opened it, and pulled out a heavy fireproof box. He placed it in front of her. "What is this?" she asked. "My life," he said simply. "Everything I ran from, and everything I saved." She opened the box. Her breath caught. Bank accounts, property deeds, stocks, cashier's checks, millions. Hemlock was still rich. "You kept all this," she whispered. He nodded. "And I'm giving it to you." Elara's vision blurred. "Hemlock, I can't." "You can, and you will. On one condition." She swallowed hard. "What condition?" He placed a hand over her heart. "Finish Nightingale," he said. "Build the jet I was too weak to fight for. Build it better. Build it so powerful that no thorn, no executive, no empire can ever bury it again." Tears streamed down her face. "I promise," she whispered. "I'll finish what you started." Hemlock smiled, small, tired, but full of pride. "Good," he said. "Then tomorrow, Elara Vance, we start building the future." Hemlock didn't die the next day. Life isn't that clean. Instead, he declined slowly, like an old engine that still turned over but coughed and sputtered a little more each morning. They worked while they could. Days were spent clearing space, reorganizing the junkyard, turning chaos into a crude kind of infrastructure. Nights were spent in the workshop. Elara and Hemlock hunched over Nightingale's blueprints, red pens in hand, crossing out old solutions and scribbling in new ones. "Composite materials here," Elara would say, circling a section of wing structure. "Lighter, stronger. Back then it was prohibitively expensive. Now we can do better." Hemlock would grunt approval. "And we can refine the engine intake design. Cut drag by another 3%. I always hated how they forced that compromise." They argued, laughed, cursed, recalculated. But as months passed, Hemlock's hand shook more. His breath grew shorter. The cough that used to be an annoyance became something that left him doubled over, gripping the edge of the table. One particularly bad night, when rain hammered the junkyard roof and lightning flashed over stacks of twisted metal, he nearly collapsed in the workshop. "Hemlock!" Elara lunged forward, catching his arm. "Sit down. Sit." "I'm fine," he wheezed. "You are absolutely not fine." She got him to the old couch in the corner of the workshop. He sank down, one hand pressed to his chest. "Elara," he said quietly, "look at me." She did. He was still Hemlock, the sharp eyes, the stubborn jaw, but there was something fading around the edges now, like the outline of him was being slowly erased. "It's time," he said. "For what?" Her voice cracked. "For you to stop being an apprentice." His lips twitched. "And start being in charge." He nodded toward the fireproof box on the table, the one filled with his wealth, his holdings, the hefty legacy of a man who'd sold his genius and regretted it ever since. "Tomorrow my lawyer will come," he said. "We'll sign everything properly. You'll be the legal owner of this junkyard, the accounts, the investments. All of it. No loose ends. No charity. I'm not gifting it. I'm transferring it. Because you're not a stray I found in the wreckage." His gaze hardened. "You're my successor." Tears threatened, but she swallowed them back. "Don't talk like you're leaving." "Elara." His tone was gentle but firm. "Even planes land. Nobody stays in the sky forever." The next day, a man in a sharp suit stepped gingerly through the junkyard, looking wildly out of place among the rust and oil. In the office, cleared for the occasion, Hemlock signed papers with a trembling hand. Elara watched as signatures turned into a transfer of power, the ink binding her to a future she'd never dared imagine. Harold Elias Hemlock's assets, properties, and shares became the foundation of something new. "Nightingale Aerospace," the lawyer read, peering at the document. "You're founding an aerospace company?" "Yes," Elara said simply. "And you'll be its CEO?" "Yes." The lawyer blinked. "At 18. Hemlock's glare could have melted steel. "Is that a problem?" "And no," the man stammered. "Not at all. It's just uncommon." "Good," Hemlock said. "We're not here to be common." A week later, Hemlock's heart finally decided it had flown as far as it could. He died in his sleep in the workshop, beneath the faint glow of a drafting lamp and the scattered pages of Nightingale. Elara found him in the morning. For a while she didn't move. She stood frozen in the doorway, a sharp, cold emptiness opening inside her. First her mother had left her. Now Hemlock had left too. But this time, someone had left her something. He hadn't abandoned her. He had prepared her. On the old chalkboard, beneath a half-finished equation, someone had scrawled in shaky handwriting, "You were always meant to own the sky. H." She pressed her forehead to the board and wept quietly. 2 months later, newspapers and digital outlets across the country ran the same headline. From junkyard to jetstream, young prodigy Elara Vance launches Nightingale Aerospace. The photos showed her standing in front of the newly renovated main building, formerly Hemlock Junkyard's office and sheds, now transformed into the rough but promising headquarters of a startup that refused to think small. She wore a simple black blazer Hemlock would have mocked as too formal, her hair pulled back, eyes steady. Underneath the grief, a steel resolve had formed. Hemlock was gone, but his legacy was about to take off. The day of the first Nightingale Aerospace Expo, Elara stood behind a black curtain. hands clasped tightly. Her heart battered against her ribs like a trapped bird. Voices murmured beyond the curtain. Industry analysts, tech bloggers, minor investors, and a handful of serious aerospace veterans who had accepted a last-minute, cryptic invitation from a new player with an old secret. "Breathe," murmured Hannah, Elara's newly hired operations lead, one of the few brilliant engineers who'd taken a chance on her. "You've stared down broken engines at 15. This is just people." "Engines don't tweet," Elara muttered. Hannah snorted. "Fair." The venue was an old industrial hangar Elara had leased and refurbished using a fraction of Hemlock's money. The polished concrete floor gleamed under spotlights. A massive holographic display system had been installed in the center, waiting. 5 minutes, a technician called. Elara smoothed her blazer and glanced at the logo projected on the side wall. A stylized bird, wings swept back in AV, Nightingale Aerospace. Hemlock would have liked it, she thought. The lights dimmed. The murmur outside quieted. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice echoed, "please welcome the founder and CEO of Nightingale Aerospace, Elara Vance." Elara stepped forward. The curtain opened. Dozens of eyes turned toward her. Cameras blinked like artificial stars. She walked to the center of the stage, heels ringing softly on the floor. "Good afternoon," she began. "My name is Elara Vance. I grew up in an orphanage. I lived in a junkyard. And today, I'm here to talk to you about the future of flight." That got their attention. She nodded to the technician. The hangar went dark. From the center of the room, a beam of light shot upward, blossoming into a holographic projection. There it was, the Nightingale jet. Sleek, elegant, every line optimized yet beautiful. Twin engines integrated into the airframe with smooth, organic continuity. Wings with advanced geometry, tipped with subtle curves that whispered of efficiency. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "This," Elara said, voice steady as the jet rotated slowly in midair, "is the culmination of a project buried decades ago. Project Nightingale. Conceived by a man you probably never heard of because money and fear kept it from ever taking off." She clicked a remote. Comparative graphs appeared beside the hologram. Fuel efficiency, emissions, range, noise levels, all of them favored Nightingale. 40% more fuel efficient, she said. 30% lower emissions. Quieter takeoffs and landings. A structure designed using both legacy wisdom and modern material science. She paused. This isn't just about speed or luxury. It's about responsibility. The skies have been ruled by those who profit most from old systems. It's time for a shift. Someone from the crowd raised a hand. "And you expect us to believe a startup can deliver this? Where's your backing? Your manufacturing capabilities? Your partners?" Elara smiled faintly. "Oh, I understand the skepticism," she said. "But you see, Nightingale isn't funded by a trend. It's funded by a man who regretted ever bowing to people like you." She didn't mean all of them. She meant the type that had bought silence, buried innovation, and called it smart business. "We have the designs. We have the capital. And we've already built scaled prototypes. Today is not about asking you to believe blindly. It's about showing you what's already begun." The hologram shifted, now showing footage of test-scale models flying in controlled environments, wind tunnel data, and component stress tests. Elara watched their faces. Skepticism softened. Curiosity sharpened. Greed glimmered in a few. As the presentation ended, the lights rose and applause filled the hangar, hesitant at first, then growing. Not everyone was convinced, but enough were unsettled. Enough were intrigued. In the back row, a man in an expensive dark suit watched silently, his jaw ticking. Later, he would send a message to his employer with a single line. "We have a problem. Her name is Elara Vance." Victor Thorne read the report twice, then set it down with deliberate care. He sat in his corner office, high above the city, walls of glass framing the skyline like a trophy. On the opposite wall, framed photos of his private jet fleet hung in neat rows. Power, arranged in ascending order. Below them were old news clippings from his early years, hostile takeovers, acquisitions, mergers. Everyone, a reminder of a time he'd broken someone else's castle to add a stone to his own. Now, someone was threatening his sky. Nightingale Aerospace, he said slowly. Last I checked, birds don't replace jets. His head of strategy, a thin, wary man named Keller, shifted nervously. With respect, sir, her efficiency claims are unprecedented. Marketing, Victor said dismissively. Sir, she presented data. Real data. Engineers are saying if her numbers are even half right, this could pressure us to overhaul entire lines. Victor's eyes turned cold. And who is this? Elara Vance. Keller hesitated. She's young, early 20s at most. Orphan background, according to some reports. No formal degree, but... And yet, she stands in a hangar claiming to have revolutionized aviation, Victor interrupted. Who backed her? We're still tracing funding. There are shell companies, but it seems rooted in an old Ethereum Dynamics payout. At that name, something flickered across Victor's features. Ethereum, he repeated. Keller nodded. Yes, they once worked on an advanced jet concept called Project Nightingale, Victor finished. Keller blinked. You know it. Victor rose from his chair and moved to the window, staring at the sky. I know it, he said quietly, because I buried it. He remembered the meeting. A stubborn engineer named Hemlock, a boardroom full of men in suits, the smell of money and fear. They had bought the designs. They had locked them away. They had kept the sky lucrative and predictable. Yet here it was again, resurrected by a girl from the margins. Find out everything about her, Victor said finally. Where she lives, who she hires, who she talks to. Friends, enemies, the color of her damn toothbrush. I want it all. Yes, sir. And Keller. Yes. If she's for real, we don't adapt. Victor's reflection stared back at him from the glass, sharp, unforgiving. We eliminate the problem. Keller swallowed. Legally. Victor smiled without warmth. Preferably. The email arrived on a rainy Thursday. Property for auction, Riverstone Orphanage. Elara stared at the listing. Photos of the aging building pulled her backward through time. The sickly green paint, the narrow windows, the cracked steps leading to the front door where Matron Aldridge had stood like a warden. Riverstone was closing. Funding cuts. Complaints. Regulations ignored too long. The state had decided to sell. Hannah leaned over her shoulder. You okay? Elara's jaw clenched. That's where I grew up. Hannah's expression darkened. The place you never talk about. Yeah. Hannah studied her. What do you want to do? Elara clicked contact seller. Buy it. The process moved quickly. Money speaks a language that bureaucracy understands very well. 3 weeks later, Elara stood in front of Riverstone's sagging fence. It was smaller than she remembered. Neglect clung to it. The sign hung crooked. The weeds had grown thick. The building that had once felt like a prison now looked like a relic barely standing. Hannah, a couple of engineers, and a legal rep stood behind her. You sure about this? Hannah asked. Oh, I'm very sure. They stepped inside. The halls smelled the same. Bleach and something sour under it. Paint peeled from the walls like shedding skin. Voices echoed. Faint, ghostly laughter. The distant memory of slamming doors. The matron's office door was closed. Elara knocked. Enter, came a sharp, familiar voice. She opened the door. Matron Aldridge sat behind the desk, slightly smaller now, hair fully gray, but her eyes still hard, lips still thin with disapproval. State inspectors again, the matron snapped before looking up. I told you people. She stopped. The color drained from her face. Elara, she whispered. Hello, matron, Elara said calmly. It's been a while. The older woman stood, hands braced on the desk. You're the girl who ran away. The girl you never reported missing, Elara said. That would have been inconvenient, right? The matron's mouth opened and closed. I heard Riverstones being sold, Elara continued. So I bought it. A beat of stunned silence. You what? I own this building now, Elara said, placing a folder on the desk. Ownership papers. And I'm shutting it down. You can't. I can. And I have. The matron looked like someone had pulled the ground out from under her. You don't understand what this place has done for children, she snapped, desperation cracking her polished cruelty. We gave you food, shelter. Without us, you'd have starved. Elara smiled thinly. I nearly did anyway. I learned more about fear than family here. She turned as footsteps sounded behind her. Spike appeared in the doorway. Older, taller, a little thicker around the middle, but that sneer was the same. He looked from Elara to the matron, confused. What's going on? They're saying someone. His eyes landed on Elara fully. No way, he breathed. Vance. Hello, Spike. He barked a short laugh. What are you doing here? Come to see the old dump. He jabbed a thumb at the wall. They're closing it. Figures. Kids these days are too soft. Funny, Elara said. Last I checked, you were the one who cried when someone finally hit you back. His jaw tightened. You think you're hot now, huh? In your little fancy jacket? Newsflash. Everyone who leaves this place ends up the same. Broke, angry, and... I own it, Elara cut in. He blinked. What? I bought Riverstone, she repeated slowly, as if explaining it to a child. I own it, and I'm about to tear it down. Matron Aldridge sank back into her chair. You can't just erase history, she stammered. Oh, I'm not erasing it, Elara said. I'm repurposing it. She stepped closer, eyes cold. This will become a STEM academy, a place where kids like me, like the ones you dismissed as hopeless, will learn engineering, robotics, flight systems. They'll have mentors who care if they eat. They'll have teachers who don't steal their dreams or rip their drawings. Spike paled. You remember that, Spike? Elara asked, voice low. You tore up my sketches, my first aircraft designs. You told me I was trash. She smiled. Turns out trash builds empires. Spike looked at the floor. Matron Aldridge's voice wobbled. You're doing this out of revenge. No, Elara said. Revenge is a bonus. I'm doing it because no other girl is going to lie awake in that dorm wondering why her mother abandoned her, and why the adults in charge decided the best they could do was make her small. She turned to go, then paused in the doorway and looked back. For the record, she said, you were wrong, matron. This place didn't teach me to choose my path. She smiled razor sharp. My path began the day I left. The magazine lay on the marble kitchen island, dropped there carelessly by a housekeeper. Serafina Thorne wasn't looking for it. She was looking for a distraction. The Thorne estate had grown colder over the years, white walls, glass, metal, and echoes. The staff moved quietly, carefully. Victor was rarely home, and when he was, his presence filled every corner like a tension you couldn't see but couldn't escape. Serafina took a sip of her morning coffee, scrolling absent-mindedly through her phone, when a headline on glossy paper snagged her peripheral vision. She almost ignored it. Almost. But something in her gut forced her to look. She set the cup down and pulled the magazine closer. Aerospace Today. Across the top. The girl who dared to rewrite the sky. Elara Vance and Nightingale Aerospace. Her breath caught. Centered on the cover was a photo of a woman in a black blazer standing in front of a holographic jet. Dark hair, sharp eyes, A jawline Serafina recognized because she'd seen it in the mirror once, long ago. No, it couldn't. Her fingers trembled as she read the caption. Elara Vance, 22, founder and CEO of Nightingale Aerospace, is poised to disrupt the aviation industry with breakthrough efficiency and design. The room spun slightly. Vance, she whispered. Her maiden name. The name she'd abandoned along with a little girl at a small-town airport. Her daughter. Her coffee cup slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. A maid rushed in. "Ma'am, are you?" "Leave," Serafina snapped, voice shaking. "Leave it. Go." The maid withdrew quickly. Serafina sank onto a bar stool, eyes burning, heart pounding so loud she could barely hear herself think. She scanned the article with frantic intensity. Photos of Elara presenting at an expo. Quotes about responsibility, innovation, the old ways of aviation needing to evolve. Mentions of Hemlock, the mysterious mentor who had left her a fortune and a mission. And then, buried halfway down a single line. Orphaned young, raised in hardship, Vance refuses to speak about her childhood, but records show she was once registered at Riverstone Orphanage under the name Elara Serafina Vance. Serafina flinched. She had given Elara her first name as a middle name. A foolish, sentimental decision she'd made before boarding a plane and convincing herself she would come back. She never had. "Elara," she whispered. Her girl. The girl she'd left at a fence, clutching a teddy bear and begging. That girl now stood on stages, commanding rooms, building jets that terrified the very industry Victor ruled. Serafina's lungs squeezed. She remembered Victor's recent mood, short-tempered, more abrupt than usual, barking orders into his phone about a little upstart who didn't know her place. Oh God, she thought. He doesn't know. He doesn't know she's mine. Her hands shook as she flipped back to the cover. The photo didn't lie. It was like looking at the future version of the child in her memories. "Forgive me," she whispered to the glossy paper. "Please, please forgive me." Tears slid down her cheeks, leaving streaks on skin that expensive creams hadn't managed to truly smooth. In that moment, the pearls, the designer dress, the sprawling mansion, they all felt like props in a cruel joke. Her daughter was out there reshaping the sky, and she was trapped in a gilded cage, married to the very man who had once buried the dream her daughter now sought to resurrect. Victor walked in just then, knotting his tie, phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care what the board says," he snapped. "We move against Nightingale now, before she gains more ground." He stopped when he saw Serafina's face. "Who are you talking about?" she asked, voice quiet, dangerous. Victor frowned. "Just business." She held up the magazine with a shaking hand. "This business." He glanced at it. Recognition flashed. His jaw clenched. "Yes," he said. "That one." His eyes hardened. "That girl is becoming a problem." Serafina stared at him. Problem. He had called their daughter problem. Something inside her cracked open, flooding her with shame, fury, and a desperate, belated instinct. "I need to see her," she said suddenly. Victor raised an eyebrow. "What?" "I need to see her," Serafina repeated, standing now. "Elara. I know that name. She stopped herself just in time. Victor studied her. "Why do you care?" he asked slowly. Serafina swallowed. "Because she's my daughter. Because I left her. Because she rose anyway. Because," Serafina said carefully, "if she's threatening your empire, maybe you should understand who she is." Victor smirked faintly. "That's what I pay other people for." He took the magazine from her, glanced once more at the cover, then tossed it onto the table. "Forget her," he said. "The sky belongs to people who can afford it, not to runaways from nowhere." He walked away, but Serafina couldn't. Her eyes went back to the abandoned magazine, to Elara's face, to the line that announced to the world that her daughter was no longer a forgotten little girl at a fence, but a woman standing on the threshold of power. Serafina wiped her tears and made a silent promise. If there is any chance, any opening, any moment, I will try to reach you. I will try to fix what I broke. She just didn't know yet that when she finally stood before Elara again, it wouldn't be as a mother. It would be as a guest at the unveiling of the very jet that would help bring Victor Thorne's empire crashing down. The world was changing. After Elara's expo, Nightingale Aerospace didn't just make headlines, it dominated them. Investors called. Journalists begged for interviews. Engineers from top companies sent resumes daily. But Elara had no time to celebrate. The more buzz Nightingale generated, the more pressure Victor Thorne applied. Reports of corporate spies probing Nightingale's systems began trickling in. Rumors spread of Thorne buying up patents suspiciously similar to Nightingale components. Investors whispered about accidents at rival companies. So Elara made her next move, the one she had been planning since the day she saw that private jet fly over the junkyard. A move Hemlock had once called insane. A move Victor Thorne wouldn't see coming. In the conference room of Nightingale Aerospace, Elara sat across from Hannah and their legal and financial advisors. Her fingers drummed steadily on the armrest. "Are we ready?" she asked. Hannah nodded. "All funds transferred through shell corporations. No traceable line back to you. And the offer amount? Substantial enough that Thorne Airlines can't refuse," one of the attorneys said. "You'll own a majority stake if they accept." Elara leaned back, eyes cold and sharp. "Good. Send it." Hannah hesitated. "Elara, this will shake the entire aviation industry." "That's the point," Elara said. She paused. "And when he realizes who made the offer?" Hannah smiled grimly. "He won't be able to undo it." 3 hours later, in Victor Thorne's penthouse office, chaos erupted. Victor slammed his hands onto the conference table, sending papers flying. "Who the hell placed this offer?" he snarled. His executives trembled. "It's anonymous," Keller said, flinching. "Sir, they're offering nearly double the valuation. If the board sees this, they'll force me to sell," Victor finished, voice dripping with venom. "Unless I stop this bidder." "Can you?" Keller asked carefully. Victor glared at the screen displaying the offer. "Everyone has a weakness," he said darkly. "I'll find theirs." He didn't know the weakness belonged not to the bidder, but to Victor himself. The attack came at dawn. Elara was reviewing fuselage design updates when Hannah burst into her office. "Elara! Systems breach." Elara spun. "Where?" "Everywhere. Servers, communication logs, prototype archives. Someone's digging into the blueprints." Elara's blood chilled. "Thorne." Hannah nodded grimly. "We traced the IP addresses to a Thorne Industries satellite office." Elara's jaw tightened. "He wants Nightingale's secrets. And he's trying to push the narrative that you stole his designs." Elara froze. It was brilliant and monstrous. Victor was trying to flip the story, bury Nightingale by claiming Elara had hacked and stolen concepts from him. He had underestimated something crucial, though. Elara wasn't just Hemlock's protégé. She was Hemlock's successor. "Activate the contingency," she said. Hannah blinked. "Seriously?" "Yes." Hannah made a shocked noise. "He buries you and you bury him deeper." Hours later, global news exploded. Thorne Industries under investigation for illegal espionage. Corporate sabotage attempt exposed. CEO Victor Thorne accused. Nightingale Aerospace releases evidence of Thorne's decade-long patent suppression. Elara hadn't just caught him. She had exposed everything. Every illegal acquisition. Every buried patent. Every time Thorne bribed engineers to stay quiet, including the original suppression of Project Nightingale. Victor's private line rang nearly 20 times before his assistant dared interrupt. Keller entered the office, swallowing hard. "Sir, federal investigators want to speak with you, and your board wants you to step down voluntarily before your stock plummets." Victor turned slowly. His eyes were ice. Who exposed this? Keller swallowed. A woman named Hannah Kim filed the documents on behalf of Nightingale Aerospace. She used a burial protocol, Victor said softly. Hemlocks. He realized then, this wasn't just a threat. It was vengeance. Hemlock had returned from the grave through someone who carried his fire. Victor slammed his fist into the desk. Elara Vance, he growled. That girl is destroying everything. Keller's voice shook. Sir, she now owns 48% of your airline. Victor stared. It hit him like a plane crash. The takeover was real, and he was losing. The unveiling of the first operational Nightingale jet was an event the world refused to ignore. Journalists flew in from 5 continents. Engineers from NASA, Boeing, Airbus. Investors. Politicians. Influencers. And among the VIP list, one name stood out. Serafina Thorne. She had RSVP'd anonymously, but Nightingale security flagged her immediately. Elara saw the name and froze. Hannah had looked at her carefully. You don't have to let her attend. But Elara's voice had been cool and steady. Oh, I want her there. The ceremony took place at a private hangar, transformed into a luminous gallery of innovation. When Elara stepped onto the stage, spotlights illuminated the massive structure behind her. The Nightingale. Real. Finished. Radiant. Sleek silver skin. Whisper-quiet engines. Wings with elegant curvature. Glass canopy gleaming like a tear in daylight. The crowd erupted in applause. Elara stood tall. Nothing like the abandoned child who once clung to a chain-link fence. Today, she began, we unveil more than a jet. Today, we unveil the future of flight, and the end of an era built on suppression and monopoly. In the front row, Serafina sat frozen, hands trembling in her lap. Her eyes were locked on Elara, wide and wet. So familiar, so different, so unreachable. Elara continued, Hemlock taught me one truth. The sky isn't owned by the wealthy. It belongs to the brave, to the innovators, to those who refuse to accept limitations. She gestured to the jet, and today the era of limitation ends. The crowd surged to its feet. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted. Industry titans murmured in awe. But Serafina heard none of it. She only heard the echo of a small girl screaming "Mommy" through the roar of jet engines. When the applause died down, Serafina rose shakily and moved toward the stage. Security stepped forward, but Elara held up a hand. No, she said. Let her through. Her mother approached, tears streaming down her cheeks. Elara, Serafina whispered. My baby. But the moment was interrupted by a commotion outside. Voices. Running footsteps. Then, breaking news, someone shouted. Thorne's private jet has been impounded by Nightingale Aerospace. Serafina's face drained of color. Elara smiled coldly. Oh, yes, she said softly. We're not done yet. The commotion grew louder as journalists swarmed toward the runway. Elara stepped off the stage, motioning for Serafina to follow. Security cleared a path. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. What happened? Did Nightingale seize a Thorne aircraft? Is Victor Thorne here? Elara stopped before the massive windows overlooking the tarmac. There it sat, a sleek, silver Thorne Industries private jet. The same model Elara had seen fly over the junkyard. The same symbol of her mother's abandonment. Now grounded, flanked by Nightingale security vehicles, being tagged with seizure notices. Serafina gasped. Elara, what are you doing? Elara turned to her, voice quiet but deadly sharp. That jet, she said, was seized legally as part of the takeover bid's final stage. Thorne Airlines, your husband's empire, now belongs to me. Serafina staggered back. No, you can't. Oh, but I did. Her tone held no anger, just cold, precise justice. Serafina stared at the aircraft, hand shaking. Elara, please, your mother is. You lost the right to say that word to me, Elara said. Serafina's breath hitched. The jet's engines powered down, mechanics attaching clamps to its wheels. Elara stepped closer, her voice dropping into a razor's edge whisper. Do you remember the day you walked up the stairs of a private jet and left me behind at the fence? Serafina's eyes flooded. Yes, every day, every night. I regret. That jet, Elara said, pointing to the grounded aircraft, was bought under Thorn Airlines, part of the company I just purchased. And now. She smirked. It belongs to me. Serafina pressed a trembling hand to her mouth as the cameras snapped wildly. That flight she took away from her daughter? Elara had reclaimed it. With interest. When the journalists cleared and the lights dimmed, Elara stood alone with Serafina beside the Nightingale jet. Silence fell like snow. Serafina's voice broke the quiet. Elara, please. I know I failed you. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But please. Elara's expression was unreadable. You want forgiveness? She asked softly. After abandoning me? Serafina's voice cracked. I was scared. I was broke. Victor promised me stability, a new life, protection. I thought I'd send for you. I told myself I'd fix it later, but later never came. I was weak. I was selfish. And every day since, I've hated myself for it. Elara listened, expression calm but distant. Do you know what Hemlock told me? Elara said. Serafina shook her head. That men like Victor build cages out of money. That the sky belongs to those brave enough to learn how to fly. Serafina reached out trembling fingers. Elara, please. I want to know you. I want a second chance. Elara stepped back. No. Serafina flinched. Tears streamed down her face. Elara, I'm your mother. You were, Elara corrected gently. And for a long time I waited for you. But the girl who waited still lives back at Riverstone Orphanage. She isn't me anymore. Serafina sobbed openly now. Please. Elara's voice softened, not with affection but finality. You chose your path, mother. She turned toward her gleaming Nightingale jet, the creation that symbolized her rebirth. And now, she said, her voice rising, I own the sky you fly in. Security approached gently, guiding Serafina away as she cried out Elara's name. Elara didn't turn. She ascended the steps of the Nightingale jet, exactly as her mother once did. But unlike Serafina, Elara wasn't fleeing. She was rising. The door closed. The engines hummed to life. And as the Nightingale lifted into the sky, smooth, silent, breathtaking, Elara felt something inside her finally settle. This was closure. This was justice. This was flight. She didn't need her mother's apology. She didn't need her past. She had the sky. And this time, it belonged to her. The end.